Mm-hmm.
Deep breath, and
Yep.
here we are.
And here we
starting over.
Starting over again. Yes. Yeah.
Starting at step one.
Yep. Step one.
And I'm super, super, super excited that you have brought this whole project to me. And I just can't tell you how grateful I am to you for just all your thought you've put into everything. It's just so perfectly planned, and now we're executing.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people know I'm more of an idea person than an execution person. So you're helping all this get executed. Great. So I'm excited to be doing this with you, Jose.
Well, and even with that, I think, I guess maybe just kind of give the audience a little bit of context. When you and I first met to talk about this project, I wanted to create something, because too often in times we hear about people not being transactional, and then people just, other people on the other side are more relational. So how do you bring that out? And I think many times people are a little bit guarded in what they say, but I wanted people to get to know you the way that I've seen you go about just your daily life, your business, and social media only gives like,
little tiny glimpse.
Half of the picture of what the person is. But you, there's something about the way in your family that you guys carry yourself that I admire. I really do admire. So
that means a lot to me, coming from you especially.
Yeah, thank you. But let's start it back a little bit. So talk to me a little bit about your adventure, or your race to where you're at now, right?
Okay.
Like your walk into real estate.
So this is 2026, starting out of new fresh year, and my 24th year as a full-time real estate agent here in Omaha. So I know I don't look old enough. Just but so that's super exciting, and it's just been a career that's really blessed me. It's tough. It's not for the weak of heart, but it is challenging in all the good and bad and challenging ways. So I kind of have an interesting background. I did go to college. I do have a college degree. And I have a bachelor's of science in computer information systems.
Okay.
So a lot of people don't know that about me. And I was going to my sixth and hiring interview at Capgemini to be get my dream job to be a systems analyst for this big company, and that was actually on 9/11, 2001. Yes, yeah.
Wow.
So I was getting ready, and I came out, and my roommate was in front of the TV, and she was crying. She was watching the towers go down. I'm getting the chills just thinking about it. The phone rang. The interview was canceled. The job went away. They had people in the towers. It was really, a moment it was a life-changing moment.
Well, you'll never forget that.
No, right.
No, yeah.
Kind of panicked, took a backup job. It wasn't ideal. My roommate at the time had gotten into real estate. Her uncle had he was a broker in town and taken her under his wing. And 6 months later, took me under his wing as well. And we started a partnership, and the rest is history. I've been a real estate agent since it was 2002, June of 2002. So, and the interesting thing is, because I never thought I would go into sales. I was a computer scientist, So
well, yeah, those two don't mix.
You wouldn't think so, yeah. But when you as a real estate agent, as an insurance agent, you run your own little mini business basically. So I knew a lot of I knew systems, I knew workflow charts and that type of thing. So, and just organization as far as all that that you learn in that degree. And so that's really helped me throughout my career. So awesome. I know there was a bigger plan there. But I when I first got my license and was practicing real estate, and I would go back home to Alliance and go out to lunch with my mom's friends, and they'd say, "Oh, we always knew you would do something in sales, or you'd be good in sales, or you'd be good at real estate. Your mom always thought she wanted to do real estate. And I was just like, nobody, why didn't anybody tell me this when I was sitting in the computer lab for hours and hours and hours programming, mainframe computers. But so, God has a way of getting you there eventually where you're supposed to be.
So something that you said there, and I was kind of thinking about this even on the drive in, and this is my view. So when we talk about even like with relationships, because you think about what you were going into and where you're at now, the one thing I always think that you have a strength in, and they say that there's 3 different levels as far as leaders. There's the type of leader that and this, everybody has this, where you think about how a situation affects yourself. Mm-hmm. The second one, and it's a skill. The second one then is you focus on how does this situation and your decision affect the other person. Mm-hmm. And then the greatest one that a lot of people can't get to, they can, but it's really difficult. The third is, how does this affect not only myself, this person, but the grand scheme of things? Mm-hmm. And I think you've done that. From what I've seen from afar, I know we've kind of reconnected, but even the way that we go about our business is, and I think that's why you're successful, is because you don't just focus on how is this going to affect me. Yeah, monetarily, we get paid for our services, but at the end of the day, how is this going to affect this person, and then as a whole?
And wouldn't it be great if everybody thought in that third frame of mind where, mm-hmm. How is this affecting me and this person and everything as a whole? And also, how is that like falling into God's will, God's plan? Yeah. So to your point, I struggled with, am I doing the right thing? And God showed me that, I am where I'm supposed to be. And so I'm very blessed and thankful for that. And given that I've had this great opportunity and been blessed in this career, so you were talking about relational
versus transactional.
Relational versus transactional. We're both having a hard time. And it's both. Kind of my rule of thumb is I treat everybody like they're my little sister. People know me. I have one sister. She's 3 years younger, much smarter, and she's and she's bought a few houses, sold houses through me, and I say, I'm going to treat you just like I treat Amy, because that's how I would want to be treated. It goes back to the golden rule: treat others how you would like to be treated. And that's what I would expect, and that's what people deserve, especially when they're making this huge decision, probably the biggest investment of their lives, for their family, for their future wealth. And so just looking at the big picture is so important when working with individuals and families and making this type of a decision. And that kind of plays into something else I was going to talk with you about is, I think this probably came out about 8-10 years ago, but and I think it comes from Steve Jobs actually. But what is your why in your business, or why in your life? And it was back when we were in the networking group together, so it must have been 8-10 years ago. I went to a workshop, and it was figuring out what your why is. And ever since then, I had never thought about the transaction and the relationship, and how I never just really thought about how they work together and how I work within that that scope of mind. And so I came out of that, and I did my homework and figured out my why. And interesting that you bring up relationships, because my why was relationships. That is, I guess, my commodity as far as what I find value in. And I strongly feel like I got that from my mother. So my mom has been gone now, it was 98, so over 25 years. She, after a 10-year battle with breast cancer, we lost her in 1998. She was 49 years old. I am 48 and a half now, so it'll be really really weird year when I'm older than she is, but or she got to be, but she taught my sister and I so many valuable things, but specifically through her actions and her relationships, just taught us how important relationships are. And I would not call her a wealthy woman in the world standards as far as monetarily, but so wealthy in relationships to the point that when it was kind of towards the end, the entire community of Alliance, Nebraska came together and did a walkathon at the high school track, and it was 24 hours. So people from the community, people she grew up with, people I grew up with, people my sister grew up with, were going to high school with at the time, walked that track, ran that track for 24 hours through the night, raising money for our family, just because. And the woman that put it on was my mom's first kindergarten. So my mom was kindergarten teacher aide from 1985, 7, something like that. So,
but see, and that's okay. So to that, so I see where you get like the relationship aspect of like your mom, and something I always say, and I didn't know that. I didn't know that your mom wasn't around. I didn't know that she had passed in that time. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah. But something I always tell people that when they talk about who I am, I always say that like my heart I get from my mom. Mm-hmm. I see that a lot in you. Mm-hmm. I don't know your mom, but I can only imagine that that's probably where you get. And I always then say work ethic wise, I both get from my parents of just working hard. And I think, us from like smaller communities and just being from like Nebraska in general, I think that's something that a lot of people know us by. Mm-hmm. But one question I wanted to ask about your mom, what would you say is, from what you can remember from your childhood, something that has always stuck with you that she used to say all the time? And in retrospect, you think, man, I catch myself actually saying those things now.
I laugh because I just did this too. This is not as touching as you probably are reaching for, or not reaching for, but talking about. But our oldest, so we have 2 boys. Shepherd is 12 and Sawyer is 9, and Shepherd is 12 and a half, going on 13, going on teenager. And all the awkwardness right now. I hope he never watches this, but dealing with it well. And so the other day, and this is kind of to lighten the mood a little bit, he was just like, "Why are you looking at me like that?" And I said, and it just made me flash back to my mom when I was in junior high, and I hadn't thought about it for so long, but and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm just like her. Because I would look at her and I say, why are you looking at me like an alien, Mom?
Yeah.
And she would be like, I'm not looking at you. And I found myself doing the exact same thing. You're just like, oh my gosh, your face is changing, mm-hmm. and you're, all the things. And so that's, something. And so then I got to share, because of course my boys never met my mom. My husband never met my mom. So I try to share more and more, especially as they're getting older, more and more stories. And I said,
Grandma used to do this, and Grandma used to do that.
Yeah. I said, oh my gosh, Grandma Chrissy drove me crazy in junior high, always staring at me. And I would say, stop looking at me like an alien. What's going on? What's going on, Mom? And he's like, that's what you're doing. So it was and he kind of laughed and giggled, and it was a good little bonding moment. That's awesome. That's not, it's more of just kind of bringing her personality out through me and through my interactions with the boys. So you kind of talked about, and I don't want to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
Our backgrounds. Now, being from small towns, and you're actually from Kearney. Also a small town in Omaha. And originally, your parents are immigrants?
Yeah. We didn't talk. Yeah, we haven't really talked a lot about. So
that I did not know until we were chatting about that.
Yeah. So my parents were from El Salvador. And you guys can kind of do your history on this, but there was basically a civil war that was kind of going on. Okay. During that time, and I've only been back maybe like 2 or 3 times since then, but they tell us stories and stuff like that about it. But for whatever reason, I don't know why they found Nebraska out of every state that you can think of the middle of Nebraska that has all 4 seasons.
All 7 seasons, I tell people.
7 seasons. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, 7 seasons. Depends on where we're at.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, grew up there, and it was just it was a quiet community. I always felt like safe, and I think for us as parents, we want our kids to grow up in an environment where they're encouraged, that people look out for them. And man, did people, like, the one thing I even now think about, I hated in smaller communities, sometimes you can look at it as good or bad, but people always knew, like, I can't do anything because someone's going to tell my dad.
Oh, yeah.
And not that I got like in huge trouble like in those years or anything like that, but on the same token,
you had eyes on you, which is not a bad thing.
No, it's not. But even kind of growing up, you talk about with your mom. I always remember, I guess I get like a lot of my personality from my mom, because she's always smiling. If you know my mom, she's always smiling.
That's how you are.
Yeah. She always is. And she's a kidder. Like, she kids around, and I kid around with my kids and everything. But both of them, the thing that I appreciate is the way that they go about doing their business. They work very hard for the life that they have. Mm-hmm. And the biggest thing that I take away from them is nothing is given in this world. Nothing is given. And I can see that even now as a business owner, mm-hmm. is that I can take those things, seeds that they had planted, and I can look back, and I even thought about this just a few weeks ago. I'm like, man, I'm at kind of the same place where my dad is at, because here he is, he ventured out to do his own thing, and he still has, and he's excelling. I can do the same thing.
Here you are following in the footsteps.
Yeah, 100%.
And don't you feel like, their hard work, they walked out and showed you how to work hard, how to succeed, and now you're emulating that, and the failure is not an option. And it's not because you can't make mistakes and you can't take steps back, but we're not giving. I've been telling the boy, especially like our older boy, a lot lately, like, we don't give up. We see things mm-hmm. through. We're not, we finish things.
Yeah.
You start something, you're going to finish it.
Yeah.
We're talking about band right now and the trumpet, but
yeah.
So, but I'm like, nope, you're finishing it out, and it's going to be good for you to, anyways, have the skill and just accomplish. Just know, okay, I did that. It was hard. It was out of my wheelhouse. It was out of my comfort zone, but I did that, and that's so important, because a lot of kids just don't.
Well, and it's a mindset.
Get pushed.
Yeah, and it's a mindset. Like, we were talking about. So there's this. Oh gosh, I'm trying to remember this song, but it's by Forrest Frank. So we love Forrest Frank in our home. Same. And it was at a basketball game, and I was telling the kids, I said, boys, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, even in the midst of whatever is happening, there is still an end goal, and you weren't created, you're not designed just to fail. I'm not going to let you fail. Like, you got a lot of people around you in the community that are rooting for you. It's not just mom and dad, it's aunts, it's uncles, it's, close, like, knitted friends. But I want you to think of it this way. I see you as gold. And both for my daughter Annalie and Graham, I see you guys as gold. Why don't you see the same thing in yourself?
That's cool.
Mm-hmm. But I think as parents, we can say it, and sometimes like, oh, it's just mom and dad. Yeah. And that's why I had asked, like, is there something from the past that your mom used to say? Because that's how I feel now, that I understand what my parents went through. I understand, like, some of the things that I put them through. But that's what they showed me, is like, don't give up. Like, we see the best in you, yes. Which kind of brings me then to my next point. So
I was just going to say, in all your free time, you're also coaching you're coaching basketball as well. And a few other coaching positions, right?
No. Well, no.
Okay.
So,
but yeah. So man of many talents.
I've done that. So I've always, and this is the thing too, I've always felt myself like a kid, like I'm just a kid. And maybe that's why I stay.
So I'm not the only one who feels that way.
Yes. I stay so young too, because of that.
Do you ever have people say, so how, like, what age range are they? And I'm like, I don't know. I still think I'm 27. So
I've no,
almost not quite double that. But
I've had a few kids that have told me that. I'm like, you're my favorite.
Yeah.
I'm 20. I'm like, I'm not. I'm 41. They're like, Mr. Jose, you're 41. I'm like, yes, I'm 41.
I'll take the 20.
Yeah, yeah.
No, go ahead. You were saying.
But no, so he where was I going with this? What was the question that you had asked?
We were talking about the coaching.
Oh, so the coaching. No, so I'm not, I guess, coaching in a sense. So for the last 12, I think 13 years, just doing youth ministry. And that's the thing that's passionate I'm about, because we live in a society where I think, again, when I use the statement of gold, I want kids to think that they are valued, but it's not even necessarily what I say, it's who they are and who they were created to be. And so that's an area that I don't know if I'll ever stop doing. I'm just geared that way. And it keeps me young again,
and
too.
I can see the kids really, interacting with you, really being drawn to you, and being, because you have the more youthful, like to your point, you have a more youthful approach at life. Mm-hmm. So that's what a great mentor for you to be, for those kids. And it's interesting that you say that, because I just started in youth ministry, and I'm just a volunteer on Friday mornings. But wow, it's eye-opening and so much fun. And like, I feel like my whole life is business. I live and breathe real estate. When you own your own business, you kind of do that, and especially in real estate, because there's everybody's interested in what's going on in real estate. Everybody's in, it's just a very interesting, and almost everybody deals with real estate in some, a home in some way. So it's so nice to have a different focus mindset. Like, it's just so nice to get completely out of my world and get into their world. I'm with 6th grade girls, and for a ministry called Youth for Christ, and then Campus Life is like the club on campus and I really had a hard time committing to this, and I know now that it was, the enemy keeping me from serving, and now it's just kind of flowing, and it's so fun. And it's a great way to, I think, it bringing, having that break, giving to these girls who are giving back to me. I think it makes me bring so much more into my own business, because it's, you have a fresh mind, you have a fresh look at things, you have a just that warm, good feeling about giving back and doing something, especially for the Lord, is, I just haven't had time. I didn't think I had time before to do that. And here's the thing: everybody has the same amount of time, right? Don't they say that CEOs who run huge corporations have the same amount of hours in the day that you have? It's just how you're going to spend those hours.
Well, and it's I think you're intentional, and I guess the way I even look at it. So I mean, we've talked about our children, our families. I think you tell me if I'm wrong on this. That I think that where we're at now, I'm more intentional in choosing who I want to be, the people I want to surround myself with, like as far as like capacity. So Drew and I have talked about this, and I always think that, when I'm going to say yes to something, our cup's already full. But at the end of the day, in order for me to say yes to something else, I have to say no to something that's already in that. And the biggest part for me is I'd rather say yes to these, to these kids, and just people in general. But I think that's what, again, makes you who you are and why you're so successful in the business that you're in. And so one question I wanted to ask was, when you and I have talked about this, when we talk about the experience of, like, anybody can choose any real estate agent. Okay. Right. At the end of the day. Yeah, there are. And I don't want to diminish or devalue someone that just got into this business.
Right.
But how would you answer this? Because I'm a firm believer that there is a difference between good experience and then bad experience. For someone that doesn't know anything about this and they're just getting into this, how would you describe how to choose that beyond just even reviews or anything like that? Like how do you go about it? Because I'm trying to think, when I was choosing. I mean, I knew you through networking,
Yeah.
but everybody doesn't get to do that.
Right. So you knew me well through networking. And definitely when you're getting ready to, hire a real estate agent, you definitely want to look at experience. I think that's probably the number one thing you want to look at. And is there good experience, bad experience? Absolutely. I think that reviews is a good way to start. I've had clients actually ask for past client people who are interviewing me. They've asked for references, which I think is really smart. And talk to people who actually worked with me face to face or on the phone, what have you. Also, reviewing the statistics that client, or I'm sorry, that agent has as far as the number of listings they typically do in a year, number of sales, a number of buyer representations. So kind of diving a little bit more into the experience. But given that, we had talked before about is there such thing as bad experience, and so God made us all very special, unique, and wonderful, but very unique. And so I think that so I would contribute a lot of most of bad experiences to be just mismatched personalities, because that agent might work really well with a different type of personality than this person, and vice versa. Like this person doesn't maybe, so, and that's why maybe this person needs somebody who's less touchy-feely and more straight to business. So two things with that said. A, you definitely want to make sure you have a good back and forth, a good communication with your agent, a good demeanor, a good rapport with the person you decide to work with. And secondly, you have my diverse background with the computer science and the computer nerds, and then the sales and then like the computer in the programming on the DOS computers with the computer nerds, and then praying with the sixth grade girls on Friday mornings. So I feel like I can be a chameleon of sorts as far as serving what my clients' personality needs are, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, I know I have a meeting tomorrow, and I know that she's going to need this, and Mr. Seller, he's going to need some facts and some information and some cut and dry stuff. So I'm compiling reports, and I've got that, and then I've got some maybe some plan. She's a planner, so then I've got here I've got a plan outlined for. So then they kind of both get what they need to help make the best decision for them.
But I guess I connect that to even what you went to school for.
Right. Yeah.
I think you soak up in the information, and I think I'm kind of the same way though too. It's like I take this information, and how can I explain it in a way that they will understand? I guess for me, like the way I would even say with bad experience is good and bad experience. I think it's just the communication piece. I think at the end of the day, and this goes back to why I think you have done so well. We take the time. When I say we're intentional, we're not rushing through all things. And I think when we do rush, that's where things get dropped.
Yeah.
And when we don't set proper expectations as far as like what's my responsibility, and then what's the homeowners, or the potential homeowner, like what's their responsibility, what's the outlook. And I think in our previous talks, you do a really good job of just mapping that out for people.
Oh, thank you.
Overall, like you do a really good job of that.
I think it's important they know what they're getting into.
Yeah. So one final question I wanted to ask is, and I know we've talked about this before. So at the end of the day, when we leave this life kind of behind, okay, what would you want your kids, your husband, and the people that are closest to you, or people that have just known you, what do you think that they would say?
That's a great question. Obviously, we both have a pretty strong work ethic, and we both are working for something, and monetarily, there's monetary goals there. And we want to leave our kids, our spouse, if we depart before them, comfortable. But more importantly, I want my children, my husband, to just value relationships, value what God's given them. And just this week at my Bible study, we're talking about God has granted us with gifts, and it is our job here on earth to steward those gifts. And I was like, wow, that's cool. It's in James. And if you're kind of going against God and God's will if you're not stewarding those gifts. So I kind of joke that I talk a lot. My husband, if you know him, he's a little more introverted. He doesn't quite talk as much. And I was presenting at his office this morning, and I was like, talked for the full 50 minutes. And I was like, sorry, I talked so much, but I brought statistics and all this stuff. So I brought knowledge. So I also very value. I think I've talked about statistics and numbers and stuff several times, facts, several times today. But I value knowledge, and then relationships. But to your point, that communication is so important in our businesses. But to kind of wrap it up with what I want to pass along to my children is just the value of others, and how enriching life, how much more enriching life is when you have that fellowship and have those relationships with others.
And I like that, like something that I've always talked to the kids about. With everything that we have, may we be good stewards of the things that we've been given. And I think, and I hope that I have done well even in this relationship, because I want to steward this relationship well. I do.
I so appreciate that, and you absolutely have. I ditto everything you've said so kindly about me today, and just times 10, because I have so much respect for you and everything that you've grown, and I'm excited to talk more about your past and your kind of growth to where you're at now, and how exciting where you're at with this new company. And I really want to talk more about that.
We will.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
We will.
Jose, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
And for this whole plan and this whole idea. I'm so excited.
Yeah. And I'm glad.
Fun.
This was fun. And I hope that, whoever listens to this, that they see that at the end of the day, even like behind our business, that we are who we are, Yeah. But I was really,
whether you like it or not. No.
Yeah. But I'm really
glad
that
I talked too much or not.
No, you're good. You're good. All right. So I'll let you sign off.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Jenn Bennett with Berkshire Hathaway HomeServices.
And Jose Dimas with Goosehead Insurance.
Real estate.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Have a good day.